Hey everybody, it's Kelly from Silly Moon Quilting Co. I hope you're doing great today. Today we're going to be talking about placemats and a couple different ways that you can get your placemats done. There's going to be the super fast way and there's going to be the more complicated way. And the super fast way is going to start with something like this. This is a panel. I'm not sure if you can still get this panel. It was one from my stash, The Joys of Cleaning Up Your Sewing Space. So this is a beautiful Northcott panel from probably 4 or 5 years ago at least, that I found in my stash, and I thought perfect time to quilt these up into placemats. The other placemats I'm going to show you is there's 4 of them, and on those ones I pieced them from a pattern, and I'll put all the links down below to the pattern name and everything. I pieced them and then I quilted each one of them individually. We'll talk about placemats and which ones get done faster. We're going to be quilting this one with our overall design ruler TWISTIE. I haven't used TWISTIE in a while, so we use TWISTIE, and depending how things go, we may come back and do some extra stitching, where am I here? Extra stitching within the maple leaf itself. Now, this panel, of course, does lead itself to doing some other ruler work or free motion quilting. I could stitch around the maple leaf itself, but I want placemats that I can get done. I want them done fairly fast, and there's enough of a print on the placemat that I'm okay with not adding extra stitching to it. You can totally decide whether you want to add more, and we'll talk about that more once I switch over to the machine. We're going to talk about different ways to do your placemat, doing them really fast all in one swoop and then cutting them all up, or we're going to talk about piecing them and quilting them individually. So I hope that you enjoy. Okay, so we're all set up at the machine here. I've got some variegated thread, which you don't see me use often, but I just thought it was really pretty. I think it's actually Christmas thread, but I like it. So it's green and golds and reds, and I thought it kind of went nice with this. We're going to be using our TWISTIE, and again, this is one big panel. So when you have a panel like this, or any panel, you can break it down into sections and quilt it. So I could easily do each of these sides, and I could do some straight line quilting, or I could do some angle quilting on either of the 2 sides of the maple leaf or the flag. And then I could go into the center part here and I could stitch. I've got a nice line here, so if I just used my edgy 6, I could easily stitch this all the way around, and then I can echo that in there. Lots of different ways for you to quilt this, but we're going to quilt it fast for this one. I'm going to show you some other placemats that I took a lot more time to quilt, and you'll see the difference. They're placemats. If this was going to be a wall hanging or something, I might be a little bit more concerned about, or if I really wanted to practice my straight edge ruler work, I would maybe use this as a good size to practice on, because it is a nice size. It's 6 placemats. So it is a nice size, but I also want to show the other side of getting something quilted. So there's I'm going to take a whole bunch of time and quilt this and do a bunch of designs in the sides, and then I'm going to do a bunch of designs in here, and I'm going to echo this. So lots of options for this panel, but I'm also going to show you I've got to get this done because I need it tomorrow option. And I don't need this tomorrow, but I want to be able to show you that you can still create beautiful placemats by doing an overall design. And this is a good way to show you TWISTIE, which we haven't played with in a while. But TWISTIE will work really nicely because it's a meandering up and down all over path. So it's going to quilt the whole space really well and hold it together in the wash once we start throwing these in the wash. Really different ways that you can quilt the same thing. But again, it comes down to, if you've taken classes with me before, you know we talk about the reasons and the choices of quilting things, and one of them is time, and the other one is ability or space, etc. So if you don't have a ton of ruler work experience, but you want to practice with rulers and get something done fairly quickly, then TWISTIE or one of the other overall design rulers that we have are great options for that. So I'm going to show you how I set this up and quilt it, and I'm actually going to time it. So I'm going to time how long it takes me with TWISTIE to quilt these 6 placemats, and I'll let you know once I'm done how long it actually takes. Of course, everything always takes longer filming, but I'm going to give you a good idea. Usually I have a different thread in the bottom, but I've actually got the same thread in the bottom. The background is just a very neutral background. And again, these are placemats. They're going to get washed. I thought the variegated on the back with the twisty may look quite cool. So I'm going to go ahead and get this all quilted up, and I will time it, and I'll let you know how long it's going to take. I'll show you parts of it through this, but I'm not going to bore you. Once you kind of get through Twistie, you'll understand it. I'm going to talk you through the very beginning how I set it up, just to give you an idea. And then from there, I'll just show you bits and snippets of it. And then I'll show you the finished product and what I do with it once I'm done that. So because this panel, the placemat kind of goes this way, I want to kind of figure out where am I going to get 2 rows of Twistie. So I have to decide if I want to go vertically like this or if I want to do horizontally. And I can kind of figure out that I need to leave enough here at the bottom. I need to leave enough so that I've got enough for squaring up and binding. So I want to be about there, and that's going to work. And then I'm going to put my finger at the highest point of Twistie, which once I rotate it will also be the lowest point of Twistie. And I can see that, yes, I'm going to get 2 solid rows in there before I have to cut that, which is my dotted line that's on the fabric. That's going to be cut for my placemat. So I'm going to draw a line on the bottom of this, just so that I know I'm square. And I will measure from the line that I'm going to cut down to make sure I'm square. Now, it's a placemat. It maybe doesn't even matter if you do that, as long as you kind of have a reference point where you're going straight. What we don't want to do is we don't want to end up with it going like this by the time we reach the end. So I do typically start with one straight line, which will be the center here of my ruler, just to give me a reference point going across. After that, I don't need that because I can use the line markings that are on the ruler to line up my next row for my Twistie. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a line marking where I think is going to be a good spot for me to start, and I'll be right back. I've got my line marked on my quilt. Hopefully you can see it. I can see it. And I've got my thread here and my needle in the corner. I pulled my needle down, pulled my bobbin thread up. I've done that 100 times, so I'm not too worried about showing you that now. And now I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to stitch a row of twisties all the way along this bottom row, and then I'm going to double it and come back the other way, and I'll show you how fast that goes. We're going to set a timer for this, and I'll let you know how long it took to quilt this entire panel. And like I said, I'll show you snippets of the panel as we go along. And once I reach the end of that first one, I'm just going to make sure that my panel's staying nice and flat. Make sure I'm flat where I have to do the next section. And then I'm going to rotate my ruler and line it up again, and same thing. And I'm on the Q16 when I'm doing this, so I just kind of roll what's in behind so it's not getting stuck as I go. Just kind of give that a bit of a flat, make that nice and flat there. If you're on your domestic machine, you just kind of worry about moving it so that it's your area where you're stitching is nice and flat. And then I'm going to go on to the next one. Stop when I get to the line that's vertical there. Make sure everything's nice and flat again for my next section. And then just keep doing the same thing all the way across the quilt. You just really want to make sure everything stays nice and flat. in the area that you're going to be going to. Okay, so I've almost finished one row here. I'm going to rotate my ruler. Oh, I'm not stuck on my sticky tape. I rotate my ruler, and actually it works out pretty good. I'm pretty much at the end here, which is going to make it really easy for lining up the next row. Now, if you didn't reach to the end, hopefully you've got enough space on the side that you can continue stitching. If you don't, you'll have to stitch half and then kind of move your ruler around so that you finish this part of the design on your quilt. Up there. So I'm finished there. So what I'm going to do now is I need to do my second row. So I'm going to move my ruler out of the way. And this is where I really want to make sure, again, just take a second to make sure your quilt is nice and flat. You don't have any bumps at the back, whether you're on your domestic or sit down. If you're on a long arm on a frame, of course, you don't need to worry because your back should all be nice and tight. Then I need to move my ruler foot that direction so that I can go ahead and stitch another row. So I'm just going to stitch off here to the side, and then I don't need to worry about lining anything up. I'm going to stitch up a bit, make sure I'm nice and flat. And if you look at the ruler, we've got line markings that are on the ruler, and those are going to tell me where I need to be. So I want those line markings to be on the same, I want those line markings to match up to the row below. So we've got this line here, and I want that to line up here. So I'm going to put my ruler on my quilt, and I am going to slide it along until that line lines up. Now, I went a little far, so I'm going to come back down a bit, holding my ruler carefully so that the foot doesn't end up on top of it. Oh, and I went a little too far that way, so I'm going to go back this way. And now that line on my ruler is right on top of the line I just stitched. So now what I can do is I can either go all the way around and stitch back up. So now I've got it all lined up where I need to be. I could just go ahead and start here and then move along, but up at the top here at the back, so the problem would be at the back here, I don't have this part to stitch. So what I like to do is I like to stitch all of the part that's on the fabric that you can see. I'm going to go all the way around to this end, and then I'm going to stitch on the edge back to this point and then come back here and here, and then I can rotate my ruler. So I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm just going to stitch to the end, and then I'm going to lift my ruler foot, and I'm going to slide this out. My ruler foot a little tight in there. And then I am going to stitch back down to here where I knew I needed to be. And of course, if I had enough, I could just stitch over here, which I could, but I want to show you what to do if you don't. So I'm going to hold this, and I'm going to stitch back down on the outside. I'm going to trim all this off anyway. Back to here, which is where we knew we lined up that bottom part of that. I'm going to lift my ruler foot. I'm going to slide my ruler back under until I reach the point where everything is nice and lined up. And that would be about there. So I'm going to drop my ruler foot. I'm going to take half a stitch back just so that I'm well lined up. And again, keep in mind this is a twisty kind of meandering type motif. So if you're off a couple stitches, nobody is going to notice. So now I've done the top half of this, I'm going to come back and do the bottom half and then complete my second row, just doing exactly the same thing all the way across. So I've lined up there. Now I can rotate my ruler, and my ruler should line up with the row below here as well as here. So now I've got several different reference points of where I need to line up. I know that I'm straight and parallel to the line below. And then I'm just going to keep stitching all the way across, and then I'll stop again and explain the next row how I'm going to tackle that. I've got 2 rows done now, so that's pretty much the lower set of placemats. When we get to our next set, we have a couple decisions to make again. We can line up our twistie and repeat here. Our stitches would actually go below the line that we're cutting. Now, if you're working on a panel that you're not going to cut down, this doesn't matter. But you'll have to make a choice if you're going to cut along here. Do you want your stitches going underneath? And not a big deal because you're going to bind it and everything will end up secure. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide my ruler up so that the edge of my ruler is actually on that stitched line. Now, I can... If I was being more concerned about the straightness of this, I may not do this. But for the purposes of this, like I said, it's a meander all over. If I'm off a little bit, it's not going to be a big deal. And especially because it's going to be in a small area such as a placemat. And as long as my next row, I line up all the same, I'm comfortable enough using the stitched line on here. I was not here down at the bottom because I'm not sure how this was cut. I don't know if this was completely square when it was cut. I am relatively certain that this has been stitched nice and square or printed nice and square. So I'm going to go on that assumption because that's where I'm going to be cutting anyway to make my placemats. So I'm just going to smooth my fabric again. I'm going to line up my ruler on that line, the bottom of my ruler on this marked line on the quilt, and I'm going to repeat the same thing all the way across, doing the same design, and I'll continue to keep track of how long this is going to take. I'll be back. So here we are. We have it all quilted up. You can see the different thread. I'm actually pretty happy with that variegated thread. Like I said before, I don't typically use variegated thread. I find especially if I'm photographing it, it ends up where it's light here ends up looking like skip stitches, but this is going to work perfectly for my purposes. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this along the dotted lines here and cut the center seam here so that I end up with 6 placemats, and I'm going to square them all up. I'm not going to show you that because I'm pretty sure everybody is good at squaring things up. But just to let you know, that's what it looked like once I was all done. So they're all cut up now. You can see all of the beautiful stitching on them. You can see how this looks on the back. So because I chose to use that variegated thread, kind of just a nice even pattern on the back. And this is a good example of stitching on a neutral fabric with a brighter thread, or stitching on a busier fabric with the same thread. You can see how it shows differently, but you still get that beautiful texture and super easy to quilt. All of these took me less than 30 minutes using TWISTIE to quilt up and then cut up into this, into the placemat sizes. These were simple, fast finish placemats. So I'm going to show you now some other placemats that I recently did that were not so fast finish. And these are a set of 4 that I did, but I want to talk to you about the different options. So for this one here, I used our, they're all pieced the same, just with different fabrics. They're all pieced the same. Don't look too closely at my piecing. Again, they're placemats, right? So this is some lovely fabric that I got from Missouri Star, and I just thought it was so bright and cheery. This is all Northcott fabric, the orange, the solids. So I created some clamshells, and I used BERNINA 6.2 and a fairly fast finish for these. So nice and easy. Started in the bottom and just went across back and forth using clamshells. There's other videos of me using clamshells, so I'm not going to get in and demo this part of it, but I just wanted to see that that's how I did that. And then I used charming to do some stitching in the ditch down here. Of course, it all lines up nicely, and it's small enough as compared to Rocket, which is a larger ruler, the same sort of indentations for stitching in the ditch. But the nice thing about charming is it's smaller if you're working in a smaller space. So this is how I did this one. And then I did a simple little curve using charming to go up and down to each of the corners in the flying geese. I will talk a little bit too as I go along here about the border design that I did. So I bound this and I stitched it on the back, and then I stitched it on the front. But what I did is I glued it down, and I used acorn glue. It's nice. It's really tiny applicator, so it worked really well. And then I picked a stitch on my BERNINA, the B735, that I thought would be kind of fun as a border stitch. And this is just a great place to play with these stitches. And I did learn a few things about this, and one is, when you come to a corner, you've got to kind of figure out where you're going to start and stop. And I'm not going to go into a whole tutorial about what to do, but you want to make sure that you're letting the fabric pull through by the machine and let it kind of create the spacing for you, because if you kind of pull it or tug it too much one way, you end up with gaps. And I'll show you some examples of that as we go along. But so this one was done all, like I said, with BERNINA 6.2. There's other clamshell videos out there. As I said, I'm not going to get too much into that, but just a really fun border design on that one. But again, obviously takes more time than doing something like this, which is just an overall type design. This one here, I love this fabric. It's so bright and fresh. I wanted to do some echoing in here, so I used our Judy ruler to do some echoing in here, and then that, and then down here, and then I just translated that and duplicated it all the way across the quilt to create some nice sort of chevron type designs. And then again picked a different design for the border for this one, a super fun little flower one, just playing with different stitches. This one turned out a little better as far as the corners go than some of the other ones, but yeah, it was just kind of fun. And again, they're placemats. You know, if this was a show quilt, I would be more concerned, and I would probably ripped out some of the binding. You can see here it got caught a bit. I didn't keep it flat enough, so it did double stitches there and double stitches there. I'm okay with that for what this is, but again, lessons learned, right? Every time we touch a quilt, we want to learn something, and if we've gotten better, we learn as we go along, and by doing this, we're just becoming better quilters, and we're enjoying the process. And these placemats were a lot of fun to do. I learned a few tricks along the way, and I learned a few things that I wouldn't do again next time. This one was Turkey, our Turkey ruler. These are both upside down. So this was our Turkey ruler, super, super simple design. And I repeated it all over. I didn't differentiate between the flying geese or anything. So I just started on one side, went along, slid Turkey along, again, along all the way across to create a really nice wave pattern. You can see here's a better example of these really cute little waves that I did on the border. But if I look, where is it now? If I look up in this corner here, I had a bit of an issue where I started to push the fabric through too fast and it kind of got confused and didn't do what I wanted it to do. That is 100% human error. But then once I started to just kind of let it pull it through and do its thing, you can see it ended up nice and consistent all the way along. Just a really fun way to jazz up your bindings. And the last one here, I used two different drop rulers. I used drop 1 and drop 3. Here I've got drop 1, so that's the smaller. I did start in the center here. I'm going to bring that in a little bit. So I did start in the center here with cheesy, just to give me a little circle so that I wasn't bringing all this thread into the center. And the reason I did that as well is this thread that I've used here is a 12 weight. It's a spaghetti thread from Wonderfill, so it's a heavier weight thread. And if I'm going to do all of these petals into the center, it does create quite a bit of buildup. So it's just a nice advantage to have that little circle to start. So I do one drop and then I travel around the circle to the next one and then do the other one. There's other videos on using drop, but for this one I use drop 1 and drop 3. Or sorry, drop 1 and drop 2. So again, just a really fun way to kick it up. But you can see how doing these placemats take significantly more time than doing something like this where you're doing just a simple overall design. So that really comes down to how much time you want to spend on your quilt. And again, another fun little border design there that I thought was kind of fun. So there you have it, a couple different fun ways to do placemats. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope you can see how fast and advantageous it is to do some ruler work or finish your quilt using an overall design ruler. And we have several of them on our website. You'll find them all under the overall design tab on our website. So all of those can be used to create something really fast and get your quilts quilted fast. Be it placemats or a table topper or something a little bit larger, they all work great. But I hope that you can also see the benefit by me showing you the other ones that I did that are a little more intricate. So they take a little bit more time, but they create a great space for you to practice your ruler work, and it creates a great space for you to kind of show off some of your quilting and play with different weights of threads, etc. So both types of placemats definitely have their purpose. Again, it comes down to how much time you have and where you're going to be using your placemats. If you're going to be using them in the camper, then maybe you're not so worried about them being super fancy and pretty. If you're going to be using them on your table for high tea, then you're going to maybe want them to look a little bit fancier. So both perfectly good options. You can do some of the overall design, or you can do something a little bit more specific within the blocks that you have in your table runner, placemats, or anything. But they are a great size for you to practice your ruler work and get really comfortable with your stitches. We also have a few winners this time. We haven't announced a winner for a while, so we've got 3 winners today, and if I call your name, you're going to email me to the email address linked below. And when you do, you're going to get a code, and that is going to be your code to get $20 off your next order with us. So we have Carol McKinnon 445, that's your YouTube handle. You're going to want to give us a message or send me an email, and I'll get you a code. We've got Riva Royal 7723. I hope I said that right. REVA Royal 7723. You're also a winner. And Elizabeth McCall 7190. So if you're any of those 3 people, you can fire me an email and we'll get you your $20 gift certificate just for watching and commenting down below. Commenting and sharing and liking and subscribing is huge in our videos. Thank you. We thank you for doing that. So we have a word of the week, of course, because why wouldn't we have a word of the week? So our word of the week this week is going to be placemat. So you can use the word placemat in a sentence down below, and we will announce one winner in the next video, or maybe 2 videos. Kind of depends how things go. But we will announce a winner from somebody that comments the word placemat down below, and they will also win a $20 gift certificate for anything on our website. So we really appreciate your support. We hope that you have an amazing day. If you have any questions about any of the rulers you see in this video or any of our products, please do not hesitate to send us a message, comment below, send us an email, or contact us on any of our social platforms. Thanks so much, everyone. Have an amazing day.